Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there. Welcome back. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Turkey Day.
Gobble, gobble.
Gobble, gobble.
You know, it's interesting, too, because references to the first quote-unquote Thanksgiving, which took place sometime at the harvest. Now, this was up in Massachusetts. And, of course, you guys are probably all familiar with the stories of the pilgrims coming over and the harsh winter and couldn't have done it without a little help from their friends, the indigenous people that were used to the area.
Yeah.
Wild turkey, wildfowl, waterfowl abounded, so they probably did have some of that. They also probably had some deer venison.
Mm-hmm.
And again, no offense to our vegan friends out there. We're just talking about what they had. Yet, they didn't probably have all the trappings. They probably didn't really have a lot of the goodies, that enabled them to make all the traditional stuff that we associate it with.
Right.
Perhaps no home churned butter and things
no
like that.
cranberry, squished cranberry.
Well, they might have had cranberries. It could have been. I don't know. Anyway, it's all interesting. It's all conjecture, but the whole thing was about coming together and sharing. And there were some from the local tribes that came and partook along with the settlers. And it's just like that movie that we always see. And at first, when you see people get along and they meet each other, they've never seen each other, people from totally different worlds, totally different backgrounds, and everybody's tense in that point in the movie. Is it going to be okay? Is it going to go downhill? And it starts out and things seem to go okay. And then there's always the event that happens with that one person that maybe has a little bit too much deceit in the heart, allows the devil on the one shoulder to sway them, and then something happens and it all goes downhill.
Sometimes it might involve a shot of tequila.
Wow, I wasn't going to go there.
Well, for the holidays.
I thought when you said shot, I first heard that SH and I was thinking, she's going to say shadow being. Yeah, the little dark being, yeah.
Yes, they come with a shot of tequila sometimes.
Well, that's the Cinco de Mayo now.
Okay.
Now we're talking a different holiday at all.
Okay.
So this is the history of Thanksgiving. The first Thanksgiving was a harvest celebration held by the Pilgrims of Plymouth Colony back in the 17th century. The little town that I grew up in was founded in 1639, and then the town that I moved to from there, it was also founded in 1639. And I always could feel the vibe of both the indigenous people of the area and then the settlers. It's just like flashbacks almost from past life as well. 53 pilgrims at the first Thanksgiving were the only colonists to survive the long journey on the Mayflower. And the first winter in the New World, disease and starvation struck down half of the original 102 colonists. Again, with a little help from their friends, they did survive. But what's horrible is the tragedy that so many people don't realize happened in the Americas. As we see this headline from CNN, European colonizers killed so many Native Americans that literally changed the global climate. Yeah, it literally changed the global climate. We don't think of the fact. I mean, again, it's ridiculous to say Columbus discovered the New World. This is what we were brought up with as kids, and it was an absolute lie.
So I just want to point out I want to point out for people what kind of beings would take someone astray and take someone aside and literally lie to little children about some story. I mean, just let that soak in for a minute. What kind of being would do that?
Well, think about it. Again, it's those that are in service to self, those that are easily swayed by monetary gain, comfort, cushiness, elevation of the ego. And again, it's the system. The system conquered the world. There's very few vestiges that are outside of the system right now. And people can't recognize, perhaps because of pride, ego, things like that, exactly where their own country has fallen short. Their own, maybe even bringing it down even more locally too, states, areas, neighbors. We all fall short at times and we all get tempted. That big temptation which very well could be all complete allegory, as we've never asked Yeshua ourselves about this, about Satan taking him up to the mountaintop and saying, look at all this. Now, again, we don't believe Satan is an individual, so to speak. It's a system in its entirety. And just, again, so many people don't even know what words mean. And that's really sad, especially the most fundamentalist of mindset. It seems like they don't even understand the original meaning of words. Such as, angel really being it means messenger in Greek. And when we're talking about Satan, it means the adversary. And there's so much misrepresentation, like, over the one quote about Lucifer, that has twisted and distorted everybody's mind about, the light bringer. And, oh my, how you have fallen. Oh, morning star. That's all relating to Venus. And, again, it's just that these misperceptions get solidified in the mind by the revisionist history. The conquerors, as they're doing their conquering, they're rewriting things all the time. There was a class of, and there is, a class of scribes that's all they did was continually translate the Old Testament, the Talmud, the Torah, and write it anew all the time. That's why we have all these things that don't go together, all these revisions. And to think that anything is the irrefutable word of God is just erroneous thinking, because every single thing that we have written down is being put through a particular human lens. Every single one of us has a little different lens than the next. Even though we might agree on just about everything, we're still looking at things from a little bit of a unique angle than anybody. So there is no exact. It's all basically distorted, so to speak, by our own lens, which is developed not even just in this lifetime. It's from past life experience as well, that we can't remember perhaps entirely. We might not even remember any of our past lives. But you may have these little flashes. You might have a little fear of, running water. You might have a fear of, thunder, or a fear of certain things that you confined spaces, and you don't know why. But it very well could be related to some method that you ended up passing on or were traumatized by in a past life. Traumas that happen live in the DNA. And what the European colonizers did to the Native Americans traumatized both sides. Both sides. And so when we're looking at Thanksgiving, it's important that we look at it and understand what really is going on here. We want everybody to get along. We need to get along. But when we celebrate something that is really something that maybe we shouldn't be looking at it in the light that it was a beautiful thing. Yeah, them sharing the dinner is a beautiful thing. Yes. But what happened to the indigenous people as they ended up slowly but surely, they were on their land for generations upon generations. They slowly but surely got pushed off their land, herded into tiny little corners wherever the colonizers wanted them to. And in the meantime, so many of them were slaughtered. And again, it literally changed the global climate.
Well, I also want people to keep in mind that these beings, the ones that did this, are the same ones that are in charge now. So we are not immune. We're no immune to this behavior and this treatment than they were.
Yes, and that's one of the things that they tried to eradicate from the Abrahamic tradition is the reality of reincarnation, because it does change things. If you believe in what the church was saying, and again, 325 AD Council of Nicaea was the start of the beginning of putting the modern Bible together. Before that, there were so many different books in circulation, and Christianity was just blazing, but it was not the Christianity we have now. The Christianity we have now, even the one that comes through the Reformation of Martin Luther and many others, it still stems from the root of the writings that were given to us that come back from Constantine who was a pagan Roman emperor, who saw a vision and said, he said the vision said, conquer in the sign of the cross, and then we and others have channeled and gotten the information that the whole concept of the cross itself is erroneous. Again, the cross, when we go back to ancient times with 4 equal arms, is representation of, again, the elements. It's a representation of the elements, again, in a harmonious balance. When you shorten one side of that and elongate the other, then you have the elements out of balance. This world's out of balance. There's no balance between the divine masculine and divine feminine. It's all divine masculine, but it's not the divine part of the masculine that's ruling this world. It's the aggressive, warlike, conquering aspect of it. So, an unequal cross is very much representation, a good representation of what we have in this world, because there's no balance in this world. There's no harmony in this world. And there was 2 articles talking about the same thing there. So we talked about the horrors of World War II, and you can see this is the estimates. 24 million lost in the Soviet Union, 20 million lost in China, Germany 8.8 million, and it goes on down. 78 million is what they're saying, the people that lost their deaths in World War II. The war to end all wars. And if you look at the population in World War II, as opposed to the population of the amount of people that were on the globe, according to the numbers they give us, back in, say, the time of the Pilgrims, say take 1650 to 1750 with all that expansion that was happening. You could even branch it out to the 1800s, but the population of the globe should have been so much less at that time, according to what they say. Again, revisionist history. And then how many people talk about the American Holocaust, with perhaps as many as 100 million Native Americans killed in this European expansion, which really you can't even just blame the Europeans, because they're being used by the system to spread the system. The system is the sickness. The system is the illness. The system uses whoever it can use. And in this case, it was the European expansionism that went out, and Columbus discovered what? He discovered a way to, rape, pillage, and a ton of gold to bring back to the coffers of the church and the kingdoms.
Yeah, and they teach this to little children, that it's something to behold, and somebody is such a hero. You don't take little innocent children and lead them astray if you are trying to look after them. So we don't have anything different today than we had back then.
Yeah, and we could go back even further, because you could see, it becomes so apparent when you go into the Old Testament, this is the same system still in play. So we see here out of 1 Samuel 15:3, and we'll start at 2. This is what the Lord of Hosts says. How many people have read that, Lord of Hosts? And it just goes over your head. Well, what does that mean? I don't know. All the angels? The God that's in charge of all the angels? Host, maybe? Well, hosts are armies. This is war. This is a warlike being. You could equate it to like the negative aspects of Mars, which is fascinating too, because when you actually, if you go down, I was thinking about doing a whole couple videos on it, when it talks about the Lamb of God, that whole concept again can be pointing more towards a Aries, Mars-like individual, and not the lamb that we think of, because, again, the Bible is so distorted that the Yeshua, we get glimpses of the true Yeshua in there when we're talking about the Beatitudes and things like that. And many people have said, I don't know how many Christians I've met that have said, well, I don't believe in the Old Testament. I just believe in the New Testament. I don't like the God in the Old Testament. I like the God in the New Testament, because they're catching that there is this contradiction in there. There is this opposing forces. And, while some of Yeshua's words have been distorted and twisted purposely, again, revisionist history, it's happening constantly. 3,000 edits in the oldest copy of the Gospel of John alone. It's like you can't find a word that hasn't been, jotted, tittled, crossed out, scraped away, and then revised. So you got to see what's going on here. But again, most of the people that just blindly follow, they haven't done the research. It's just that simple. They're just trusting what others have told them, and they haven't gone deep enough themselves. They don't even understand how all this was put together. So when we're talking Lord of Hosts, that's the head of an army, is what you're talking about. This is a warlike thing, a warlike being. I witnessed what the Amalekites did to the Israelites when they ambushed them on their way up from Egypt. Now go and attack the Amalekites and devote to destruction all that belongs to them. Do not spare them, but put them to death, men and women, children and infants, oxen and sheep, camels and donkeys. So Saul summoned the troops and numbered them at Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers, 10,000 men of Judah. Again, when we go back to some of the numbers that are given here, they don't equate with what the numbers are that we are told. The number of people that lived on the planet in that time, it doesn't add up. So are they just exaggerating, trying to make their army seem more grand, as if that would be a thing that would be able to be beautified and glorified? Think about this, glory be unto God. Well, the real source of all, what does it need to be glorified by? I mean, it's all in its entirety. This is exactly the twisted aspects, and people just blindly repeat things without even thinking, without spending deep time in meditation to say, does this really feel right? What does something feel like? Use your heart to feel instead of just accepting what others are telling you, pounding it in your head.
Well, yeah, I kind of wanted to point out when I was trying to understand the Bible and study the Bible, I allowed myself to be spoon-fed by people who did believe in the Bible. So everything that they were spinning, everything that they were saying, it kind of made me believe in it more and more and more. And it wasn't until I started questioning and started looking at things myself and asking Cindy, what do you think about this? That's when things started to unravel for me, and that's what allowed me out of the box. So don't let yourself be spoon-fed. Ask yourself what this feels like.
And so, as we're looking at all this, for you that are in areas that are perhaps hotly charged with emotions, like we see all these migrations of people coming into other places, and in many cases, people find themselves getting, through fearful manipulation, they might get angered at the thoughts of these people, these new people coming into our area. Why are they coming into our area? And we've had people that followed the channel that seemed like good people, but then they allow themselves to be pulled down by lower vibrations when it comes to others coming into their territory. Now, we do know there is most definitely a Trojan horse infiltration that's underway. And yes, perhaps even 10% of the people that are crossing the border illegally are part of something that truly is a military operation. But then there's 90% that aren't.
Yeah.
And 90% that really are fleeing because their lives are miserable. And they're just trying to do better for their own kids and trying to save their kids' lives. So we need to have, hearts like Yeshua's in that case when we look upon on these poor people that are being used as pawns in many cases. Because the situation that they find themselves in is one that's been manipulated in order to cause the problem in the first place. Again, it's divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. That's what's been going on forever. And we all know about them wandering for 40 years. And there's so many things. Why 40 years in the desert? And Yeshua went in 40 days of, right, fasting and meditation. There's reasons for all these numbers. Why 12 tribes? Why 12 apostles? Why are there 12 months? Why are there 12 signs in the zodiac?
12 hours.
12 hours, yeah.
It goes on and on.
It goes on and on and on. And, many of us are familiar of this. And Joshua and his army, so, these people were, perhaps they were, legitimate 90% migrants looking for a better place, and 10% was the army. If that's the case, with 200 and something, right? Well, how much is that? 200,000 foot soldiers. So if that's only 10%, you're talking, basically maybe half of the population of Israel today out there wandering through a desert for 40 years. What really, it doesn't work out right. You could see this is all. Now, when the guides say, and even books like the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, the guides themselves refer to them as stories, and they say if you find these stories useful, then good. If you don't, then we don't care.
Yeah,
we
that's
don't.
just the point. There's stories to help guide, help assist, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're true.
No, but you have people that believe every single word in here is absolute literal truth, and that creates a horrible situation where people can be absolutely manipulated into committing atrocious acts if they don't see that.
Yeah, I mean, it just leaves more room for more division. So this is why in our hearts, as starseeds, we have to ask ourselves to continue to find tolerance where tolerance is, where tolerance can be had. So that's important to try to blend energies.
So did an army of 600,000 Israelites conquer the land of Canaan? And again, we have shared that the Abrahamic tradition is one that's given to us so clearly from a Mars perspective in more ways than one. Think about it. Its origins are very warlike. Strong Mars energy here. And, who are the beings that have, ruled us the last several thousand years minimum? It's, again, the group that we would call the Gigi, who come from where? Well, originally they were actually on Nibiru, and they are a class of being that comes from the Nibiruan influence, we should say, sphere of influence. And they were on Mars and they came here. There are some that still come and go between. There are not a ton of them, but as far as the mixes of them, like pure blood EGGN, there's only several hundred. That's how many we're talking. There's not a lot. We vastly outnumber them, although they are 3D. Now their offspring, the ones that have some actual EGG pure blood in them, could be in the tens of thousands. Again, this is, we get down into that pure blood, blue blood, and we see these different people throughout our history. That the kings and the queens, the kingship comes down from on high. This is what we're talking about here. And this is not high in the sense of vibrational at all. It's quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. So 600,000 Israelites, an army. Again, if that's only representing 10% of the people, how many people is that? And again, that would equate to, back in those times, a huge chunk of the people supposedly alive on the globe. So we know that if these numbers are correct, and then we only have to look over to the Mahabharata when it talks about wars in which 1.7 billion people died in a war, to know that this cycle of death and destruction is much larger than we can imagine. And again, many of these souls have reincarnated time and time and time again, some taking positions, their old positions, up again, and basically back into leadership positions in this world, so to speak. It really gets you thinking. About 40,000 ready for war passed over before the Lord for battle to the plains of Jericho. And again, all the references about being led by a cloud or a pillar of fire, obviously they're being led by some beings with some technology. And this is so interesting to see. Excuse me, guys. Please forgive me for that clearing. They always hate when this stuff gets out there. This is the worst.
Yeah.
This is the stuff they don't want getting out the most.
I know. They've been giving us a hard time all morning with the internet going off and on and off and on.
So they'll say that, well, these people had giant blood in them, to justify. They'll do anything to justify the slaughter. They're part of the fallen angels, when really they got you afraid of fallen angels, but it's the demons that are telling you to be fearful of the fallen angels. And who are the fallen angels? Well, we've gotten that really, what they're doing is inversing everything. They always inverse everything. So when you think of light workers, star seeds that are coming from higher realms, from in many cases 5D, even 6D and 7D, incarnating in order to help the humans that have been here trapped in this cycle, that is, basically, that you could view that as an angelic being that's fallen because it's come all the way down to 3D. Doesn't have to. It's up, its normal habitat is 5 through 7D, up on the higher realms where life is much more blissful. But they have compassion for the humans, so they incarnate in order to free the humans. And yet the humans are taught that they are the evil ones. Mm-hmm. This is exactly what's going on in this world. So when you see God saying, completely destroy them, destroy the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, as your Lord God has commanded you to. Otherwise, he'll teach you to follow all the detestable things they do in worshiping their gods, and you will sin against the Lord your God. And again, if you look at this, they're calling them gods. There's even terminology in there that translates literally alien gods, literal translations. Hello. None of these are source. None are source. There was one comment when we did the video on ISIS, just showing the pure ignorance, unfortunately, and the brainwashing, where somebody said, "Oh, I didn't realize this was a pagan channel." And pagan just means its root is basically in the simple people, sort of, the people of the countryside, like heathens. What heathen? Those that are around the hearth. They're around the hearth just trying to stay warm. Mm-hmm. It's against somebody that's not in this particular system. So they are always viewed as a threat. Why did they burn the witches? Why did they burn the Gnostics? Why did they burn the Templars? Why have they persecuted anybody that had some knowledge of how things were? Because it could expose the whole system. That's the whole point of all this. And we are going to get into some news going on, but I'd like to give you guys a perspective from the reason why we find ourselves in these repeating cycles all the time, and just how we're being manipulated to go and stay divided and simply kill each other because of our political ideology or our belief system.
And always remember, we're on Rumble.
Yes, we are on Rumble and Brighteon as well. So, probably the most difficult part of all these commands from God, and again, this is not source. I mean, this is so far from source. This is... It should be obvious. And if people had any sort of spiritual inkling, awakening going on, that's when it becomes obvious. Now, 98% probably of the people that are going to view this video, it's obvious. It's obvious. The 2-3% that just come in and might watch it for the first time because they want to see what's happening with something news related, it'll be shocking to them, or they won't be able to handle it, or they'll just view it as, well, gosh, they must be possessed by demons, But the reality is that they're part of the system, and they can't accept being their whole belief system being part of the system. Why would God order the death of children and infants? Why would he order the death of innocent children? Then you see they're going to quote from Scripture, children are not innocent. These children would likely have grown up as adherents to the evil religions and the practices of their parents, and would have naturally grown up resentful to the Israelites and later sure to avenge unjust treatment of their parents. And again, it'll get to the point where God's ways is higher than ours. We can't understand it. That's what they're banking on, that you won't be able to understand it, that you won't be able to. And you'll just say, well, I got to trust. I have to have faith. You don't have to have faith in evil, that somehow evil is going to, turn into good. And I have PDFs for you guys to look at if you want to go into more depth there. It's recognizing the division. It's through division that we are truly kept down. And by the way, Southern California Utility, and again, if we're talking PG&E, then we're talking the Red Shield family.
Yes, we are.
Which again, we're talking about these bloodlines that are not ultimately of the earth anyway. These are, again, conquerors that come in from somewhere else.
And they take control of everything.
Yep. So it's actually Edison International Southern California Utility. It's going to be cutting power to 32,000 people in Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Ventura counties to prevent windstorms from toppling power lines. So those people, maybe they're going to be doing, some turkey out there on the grill.
Maybe.
Could be. This is a thing that we could get too used to seeing, and I think that's part of the whole greater purpose. Again, military to help people cope. In the health field, because there's so many positions now that are understaffed. This is in Michigan, and we see over in Minnesota, National Guard being called up. We're going to get used to seeing military everywhere. This is part of their plan. Now we need to awaken the actual soldiers and those that are in positions of power to how they're being used as pawns.
Well, hopefully some of them might be listening to this, and it might start to wake up the heart, because it is the heart that truly listens. It is the heart that can feel and hear the truth. So this is very much that frog in boiling water scenario we have going on here.
Yeah, so we have this Russian lawmaker that, has something that's making a statement that's, I think, would scare a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't that scare you if you're over in Russia? Oof. By the way, U.S. crude released by the number 46 regime from reserves will likely be snapped up by China, India, claim traders. And number 45, by the way, said that this was a very, very bad idea, as, again, that's supposed to be used only in time of WAR. And again, there is most definitely a horse that might have Trojan origins being put in place on many different levels in order to hamstring any sort of response. And don't worry, Gil Bates is going to be building a new reactor. I think this was this in Idaho? Let me remember. Yeah, it's going to be in Idaho. And all I can say is, experimental and nuclear. That's
two things that should never be seen together.
No, and again, that word can trigger a response from very, very high densities where, we've seen so many cases over the years of UFOs flying over facilities and nothing works. And, again, our technology is nothing to them. And even the technology of the, Anunnaki themselves is nothing, to the higher frequencies, to such as the G-Fed. Russia's military buildup near Ukraine is different this time, say the experts. Yes, and there's reports that there might be strengthening over in Crimea, which is occupied. It is different, because they do have this plan in effect. And the more we wake up, which is great, because we got to wake up, the more they will go to plan B, so we have to be prepared in every way we can be spiritually. And Russia launches classified military satellite. Yeah. An early warning anti-missile system, so again, this is the time, and today, again, being Thanksgiving, guys, this is the period that I keep feeling is a likely period where we'll see the start of something greater between now and the end of this year, it feels like the likelihood goes up significantly. Mm-hmm. Most definitely. When we look at scripture and we see, there's a quote in there too that talks about war and the big war perhaps breaking out, and it gives the timing as the winter time. That's always stuck with me. Always stuck with me, for some reason. Now, again, it doesn't mean that it would be a red, rosy dawn scenario happening here in the US of A, or even maybe in Australia or Canada at that time frame. This could start somewhere in the outlying, could start like the second Ukraine insurgence by Russia, or could start over in Taiwan too first, and then branch out. U.S. lawmakers coming to Taiwan on a military-focused trip, and again, there's more warnings from China about don't get mixed up in it. Don't even think about Taiwan being independent. So we see, there's these lines being put in the sand, and again, the controllers control both sides, so they could move this piece into play and move that piece into play. And Beijing praises Jamie Dimon's sincere bootlicking.
Nice choice of vocabulary words.
JP Morgan CEO, yes. So he supposedly made a joke, regarding the. I was going to point to it. P.
Yeah.
C.
Please point to
C.
it. Mm-hmm.
P. C. C. Right. The fact that again, it's all recognizing that this is where power is shifting to, and I would venture to say that I think the corporate executives wield more power than the puppets in charge, parent charge of the countries. Mm-hmm. Because it's really, again, they're more in control of the system, but they're all under control of other forces, as we know. And we've talked about Turkey a lot, and here we are talking about Turkey. No, not that which thou art eating or not partaking in, as well as it is an individual's choice there.
That Turkey.
Yes, this Turkey, as in the country of Turkey, which of course was the heart of the Ottoman Empire. And the current president, or whatever you want to call him, because again, he did kind of get rid of all his opposition. And they are in numerous countries. Their military is in Syria and Libya and in other places as well. Well, you got protesters taken to the streets because their money has collapsed completely, and even not being able, like people there are trying to place orders on some of the big giants like Amazon, and finding that they're not being shipped to their country now. Because the money is collapsing so much. So this is what happens. People take to the streets, and then, eventually, do you remember Il Duce? How many of you guys know who Il Duce was? World War II? Italy? Benito? Yes, many of you guys know. Well, what ended up happening to him? As the pictures of the photo of him and his mistress are always burned into my head of ultimately what happened to him. And I know some of you guys will explain it to others out there, as it wasn't pleasant. But that could definitely, be the case here or in any country. It could be, the fate of Erdogan. But then who takes over? Where that power vacuum comes, because you get rid of one evil tyrant, and often the next one comes and it's even worse.
There's always one in its place. What's that saying? Here's the new boss, same as the old boss.
Exactly. And then we forget about certain things, and this is a proxy war. Look at the numbers. 377,000 people losing their lives in this little country of Yemen. And again, people will look to prophecies saying, oh, the prophecy is coming true. Look, there's war, there's pestilence, there's famine, there's disease. Well, they always follow each other.
Always.
War ends up with, the conditions are created that people are no longer doing what they usually do, tending their fields. You have dead bodies that end up spreading disease. all over the place. And so ultimately you have war, famine, pestilence, disease. They all go hand in hand.
It feeds itself.
It's a cycle that feeds itself. It's pretty self-evident, so again, instead of being mystified, recognize it's a predictable pattern that exists. So again, how do we get to the place that we started at, where people are peacefully coexisting, where even people that are coming into a different land and really might not be able to survive if not for the goodwill of those who are looking at them suspiciously with good reason, but still feeling they got to do the right thing and help these people. How do we get to that point? Well, it's not going to be at the point of a sword or a gun.
No.
No. That's the bottom line. So we have to get past this war machine mentality that exists on this planet that's always dividing us. And, so one person that I can't get out of my mind in these days, that was very supportive of the channel. And, but at the same time, you could tell his own prejudices that were there. And he's from Texas too. He would say things about the migrants coming in such a way that there is absolutely no compassion there. But recognize, if you go back 300 years ago, was your family here? Were you not a migrant? Right?
Right.
I mean,
that's right.
Just look back and just open eyes. We're being forced time after time after time into these migrant waves through the warfare that never stops for thousands of years. How do we stop it? By throwing away the weapons of war. How are we going to do that? Well, we can't have the same leadership because that's what they use to rule by.
That's right. I mean, we have to break it. We have to break the cycle. It's just like any situation or any relationship where there's abuse, there's got to be a breaking point where you just refuse. You refuse. You plant your feet, you stand tall, and you say, I'm not going to tolerate, not going to do it. I'm going to change what's in my power to make my life better.
Any of you guys that have ever seen any of the movies that portray different historical battles, and again, his story, whose story? Their story. But still, we do see these battles time and time again where it's just, medieval times, or what we view as medieval times, kings, dukes, queens, princesses sometimes, raising armies to battle against their blood relatives, their own blood relatives, because of their ego clashing, raising armies of people that are basically, hungry, starving people that are desperate, so they accept it. I'll fight for you. Okay, will you give us so much food? Will you take care of my family? Make sure my kids are able to live. And then they have their battles, and then sometimes, both of the, entities at the top, the royals, come to some sort of agreement. One gets pounded into submission. Oh, they hug, they have a feast, they get drunk. And meanwhile, tens of thousands have died on the battlefield of people like everybody else out there, the non-elites. And then they'll do it again in a few years when they get angry and they start to, want to expand. Their ego gets to them again. When will humanity realize that those controlling them are so small in number? There's no reason for us to be controlled.
Well, it's more like we control each other because there's so many tattletales out there. If they see someone step out of line, or if they see someone step out of a certain situation, they're going to get angry at that person and tell them, well, you can't do that because it's against society. And, that's where we have to stop tattling on each other and understand each other more.
And again, Yeshua, when the Pharisees and the Sadducees were, attacking him, he said, you don't serve my God. And again, there's many people that catch on that the God of the Old Testament doesn't seem to be like the God of the New Testament at all times. So though there are some things in the New Testament even where you could see that Old Testament God coming through. And he said, you serve Satan. You're serving the adversary, the system. You're part of the system. You're controlled by your ego, your wealth, your greed. And there are those that do have wealth that share and are benefactors and benevolent beings. Like we think of Joseph of Arimathea, for instance, and the goodness that really was in his heart and wanting to help people who had less. So we could learn from all these things when we get past that divisiveness. And Yeshua had wanted to share about coming from the heart chakra. This is the key. It's all about coming from the heart chakra now, and compassion. The guides keep saying compassion, 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 understanding. So, again, if you're in Poland right now and you're looking nervously at Belarus and the migrants that are coming through, and that there are some that are coming in, or that are part of a bigger plan that do not have the best intentions, just as these kings and queens, these European kings and queens, knew what they were doing. And of course, the Pope and the leaders of the church, which was the power behind the kings and queens in many cases during those times, they knew exactly what they were doing. And it was all about power and control. Even though some of the foot soldiers, they could have been so blind to what's really going on that slowly but surely, in carrying out the orders, they were giving away their own souls. They were whittling away their own souls. How many soldiers have seen such trauma through the horrors of war that it's made them shattered? And there really is something called the shattered soul, where we lose parts of our own soul, and we have to reclaim them in order to move back up into the higher densities, and that is part of the process that's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we really need to focus on. Even though there's so many other things that are going around, we need to focus on the love and the heart chakra.
Absolutely. So may your Thanksgiving be blessed, and may be it full of true love and compassion. And may we really change this world in a way that will stick as we move out of the Kali Yuga and move up into what will eventually be a golden age of heaven on earth. It is a marathon. It is going to take a little time. But again, if more people we could get to recognize this, the quicker the turn will come, and the quicker we'll shed the darkness. Please do make sure you are subscribed to both channels, EEARTS and Evolutionary Energy Arts. And then also we are on Rumble and Brighteon, so make sure if anything ever happens to look for us there, and we'll expand that too when we have the time.
Indeed, we will. And I just got to say, Yeshua wants me to be a little bit more specific with the heart chakra. And today being the day that it is, when many family members are getting together that might not appreciate each other as they should, he really wants you to find a situation where that could use a little more love, or someone in the family, somebody that kind of you feel maybe rubs you the wrong way. I'm not sure how to say this, but he wants someone to find that situation, and he wants you to open and expand your heart chakra toward that situation and allow the healing energies to flow through you into that. And he says, watch and see how things unfold in your life, and we need to make this a common practice.
That's beautiful. And one thing I would share too, if you're in a relationship with somebody that you can't talk to because every time you talk, it just gets in. It's at a point where it's going to cause an argument, or negative energies to come. What you can do in meditation is just focus on your own heart chakra, see that glow, and you can see it glow with either a beautiful soft pink energy or a nice vibrant green energy, and then envision the person that you have perhaps that ongoing conflict with, and you want to resolve it, and you want to get back to having a healthy relationship with them. See them sitting opposite you, and send the energy from your heart chakra out into theirs, and see them smile, and just see this loving energy of compassion, and just send through waves of energy. You might think things like, I forgive you, I hope you forgive me. Much love, much gratitude for all the good things we have shared in the past. And, may we be able to communicate and have a loving relationship again in the future, you could just put that intention through, and over time, if you repeat this, you can break down those energetic barriers. And I wouldn't be surprised if you get a text or a call or an email saying something like, "Hey, I was just thinking about you. It's too bad. I would like to be able to have a normal relationship again."
And if you don't, it's okay. Don't go in it with expectations. Just go in it with the intent to heal yourself and see how things unfold.
Yes, exactly. Thank you, honey. As always, guys, thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. We couldn't do it without you. Please do share. Let's wake up as much as possible. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.